Hello, beer respecters. Every once in a while at McFleshman's, we do beer classes. We have a history class and a science class, and today's episode is part of the science class. I took one of the classes and condensed it down into a highlight reel, so to speak, cutting out a bunch of questions that were, frankly, very difficult to hear, and any of the bits and bops of just waiting around, because you are served drinks during this class so that you can understand tasting beer better. Allison goes into the chemistry of everything and much more. So if you enjoyed this highlight, look for the class listings, usually around the winter time because it's a little less busy. Enjoy.
Check sound, check taste, check beer.
Killed it. Delicious.
You weren't paying attention in my last class. Definitely not a Hildy. Okay. Hi.
It's a dark Hildy.
It's a dark Hildy. It's a very dark Hildy. It's a Hildy that decided she wanted to become a Yorkshire round. Welcome, everybody. My name is Allison Fleshman. What am I? I am an associate professor of chemistry, Lawrence University. Yay, and McFleshman's. I am the Mick of the McFleshmans. Technically, my name is Allison McCoy Fleshman. Yay. So today this is part 2 of my class on the science of beer tasting. I see several familiar faces. I also see some new faces, so welcome. Do not worry, you don't need to have taken my class before, but you should have, so shame on you. But, so really I divided the science of beer tasting into 2 groups. The first one is we taste with our eyes, which is lovely. You can probably see this dark beer and you've already judged it a bit. Well, what we're going to do today is talk about tasting with our nose. And so my 2 wonderful colleagues in the back, one Joel Hermansen and John Lemery, are helping me out. And they are going, yes, give them guys a round of applause. You might also notice my wonderful producer here, David Caslow.
Hello.
Producer, you might ask, how am I that famous? Well, I, along with my husband, Bobby Fleshman, and our wonderful host, Gary Arndt, have a podcast called Respecting the Beer. And we are going to record some of me talking tonight because we have all voted that I am the best one of the group.
That's true. Don't tell Joel.
I know. We definitely won't tell Joel Hermansen, who's standing right there and can hear all of the things that we are saying. Hi, Joel. Anyway, so if you're not on any of the podcasting device type app things, look us up, Respecting the Beer Podcast, follow us on Patreon, and or tune into this episode, and you yourself could hear yourself ask a question, because you will have many, because there's a lot to talk about.
Or you can come to me afterwards and I can help find the app.
There we go.
All right.
Okay, and this is me stalling, because I almost called you my servants. My servers in the back. I love them so much. Any questions so far? What are we drinking tonight?
Hildy.
Hildy. Hell yeah, I've got some Hildy. MSB. Yes. MSB. Dark note Dunkelweizen. Cool. Hazy IPA or Alter Ego. I see that. I'm trying to recognize some of them. Is that 547 or
Alter Ego.
Alter Ego or hazy? Hooray. I'm seeing our 10 Paces Lambic. Fantastic. Okay. Here they come around. So you will be receiving a beer. You are to taste this beer with a straw by placing your hand over the top to where the straw is coming out of the cup. Try to block any of the smells that are coming out and taste it through the straw. I want you to, while you're tasting this, I want you to write down 2 thoughts. I smell this and this. I taste this and this. Once you've gotten those few thoughts written down, then I want you to try the beer without the straw and with no hand. Cool? Do we all understand the instructions? This is this is good science. It's instructing you how to taste your beer. All the good science classes should have beers like that. And I believe straws are coming around. All right, so again, if you have your beer already, go ahead and put the hand over the top. Taste with a straw. It just seems so wrong, doesn't it? I see some of your eyes. You're like, I'm not going to taste my beer with a straw. Okay, y'all have your straws. There you go. Okay. So again, You're going to taste your beer with your straw, and to those listening at home, I encourage you to do the same thing. If you taste your beer, I know you're going to hear me talk to random people. Try tasting your beer by drinking it out of a can. Ooh, it's the same thing, really, if you think about it. Oh. If you are the ones that have drunk your beers out of a can, I am judging you directly right now. Or a bottle, good call. So, what do we think? With and without the straw?
Well, the bitterness came through with the straw, but not a lot else.
Oh, bitterness and nothing else. Okay, well, let's just start. So was it the same or different? Different. Different experience. Ooh, it's almost like those little molecules really have something to say. Which one did you like better? Without the straw. Okay. So if you find yourself, and I am notorious for this, the other day we had a wine and cheese reception at Lawrence, and I go to the bar, and we're meeting the president and the provost and all the fancy administrative folks, and it's a wine and cheese reception, so I go and I say, I have a beer, and they're like, we don't have beer, and I was like, well, that's ridiculous. I demand we have a beer. The vice president of student life was like, Allison, I'm gonna get you a beer. So they ran and found some Nuclearis, lovely spotted cow, it was great, but then they just handed it to me in a can. So there I am like, can I have a wine glass, please? Because always pour your beers out of those cans, because the importance is to make sure that those aromatic molecules can get to your nose. And if you don't, you are not getting what you pay for, because, any guesses who you just had? What beer we have that you just drank? Oh, 547. Oh, how about her little sister? So this is our Lil Toronado, which was made in homage to the 547. The 547 is a rather robust IPA. This is our take on a West Coast IPA, which is not as high in alcohol. I believe it's 6.7 ABV. I'm looking at you, Bobby Fleshman. Yes, get a thumbs up. As opposed to 8.9%, which is our 547. But it's made in the same style as in a West Coast IPA, but it's not as hoppy. You're going to have a little bit less hops in the notes, and I believe it does have a little bit more citrusy. Yes, you got some of that? Grassy. Yes, those grassy notes. One might call them terpenes, which is a word you will learn very soon. Okay, so that was my demonstration about how important it is to drink your beer from a glass and or a plastic cup, as we are doing now. But get it out of the can, get it out of the bottle, get it into a glass such that it too can breathe, because those little molecules have something to say, and they say it to your nose. So one of the things I really like to say in my beer science classes is that taste is the most honest communication you can have with yourself. You like what you like, and however you taste it, you can't convince yourself you like something when it tastes not so good, or when you just don't like it very much. I'm drinking a malty beer because I love malt flavor. I'm sure the Little Tornado that you just had is fantastic. I've only had it twice, I think, because I just don't drink it as often. But that does not mean I don't really appreciate that it was executed beautifully. So let's talk more about what I'm going to bring you through. Tasting is based on, or the science of beer tasting. You can dive into it many different ways, but one of the things I'm going to go off of is the beer certification judging program. So it's called BJCP, and there are these documents that you can follow to score different beers. If you were interested, you can contact BJCP and become a certified judger, to where you sit at a table and drink beer all afternoon and are trained in all of the different aromatics, mouthfeel, appearance, aromas of what it should be to the style.
Not as fun as it sounds, by the way.
It is not as fun as it sounds, as Bobby says. Oh my goodness, the diligence.
It's like a lot of paperwork.
It is a lot of paperwork. It takes the fun out of beer, but that's okay.
Sorry, you don't have to be a Cicerone to do that?
You do not have to be a Cicerone. These are two separate programs. And so the Beer Judge Certification Program is really about the beer competitions. And so when we send our beers off to get nationally recognized and win their medals, because many of them do, this is what they would use to make sure that it is, in fact, to style. So I'm going to take you through a couple of the nuances of the beer score sheet. And for those listening at home, you too can find this score sheet on the Beer Judge Certification Program. Okay, so let's break up smell and smell into odor and aroma. So there's two ways that you can get molecules into your body. You can either smell them, or you can through your nose, or you can either taste or smell them through your mouth. So if it's an odor, that means that the smell is coming through your nose, and if it's an aroma, it's coming through your mouth, getting to your olfactory glands. And so the aroma are the aromatics from tasting the beer. You missed that when you covered up, or sorry, you missed the odor part when you covered up the taste of the, or the, covered your hand over the glass or over the cup. And when you're drinking from a straw, you're not getting the odor part, you're just getting what's coming through the mouth. And so you're missing half the story. And then there are ways that you can think about, or the ways that you can dissect, for lack of a better phrase, areas on the tongue to where you're going to taste sour notes, salty notes, as well as bitter notes. And so if you've had that bitter aftertaste after you've had an IPA and it's kind of on the back of the tongue, that's because that's where the taste receptors are for the bitterness flavor. And we couldn't be talking about smelling beers without talking about our infamous 547. So the 547 is our Imperial IPA, and it has some fantastic molecules that love to dance from the surface and come to your nose. So one of the reasons that we like to have our IPA either in the tulip glass or one that's like a nonic type is because those molecules will need to be concentrated, and they will leave the top of the beer, go to your nasal cavity, and they are called volatile. Anytime you walk by a nail salon, you might smell something. What do y'all smell when you walk by a nail salon, like the little opening at the grocery store? Acetone, fantastic, nail polish remover. Acetone is incredibly volatile. Those molecules love to be in the gas phase, which is why you get them in your nose. Those types of molecules have the same type of properties that the molecules in the tops of the beers and the smells of the beers have, and that's what we're going to go into.
So that glassware is really important.
Glassware is super important into smelling and really concentrating or not concentrating. The glass that I'm holding now is a wide mouth dimple mug, and I've got my Yorkshire Round English Brown Ale. Not many aromatics in this one, not very hoppy. I don't like hops. Or I appreciate hops, just not too many of them. And so I have a very wide mouth glass right now because this doesn't have as many of the aromatic compounds that my 547 does. And so it needs a lot more help, as in there's a lot more surface area for those molecules to come to my nose, as opposed to the ones that have a lot to offer. Speaking of hops, which are not in the Yorkshire Round at all, what do hops do aside from bring some lovely cover to our outside beer garden in the summer and fall? So hops add a lot of these aromatic compounds, the molecules that are going to quickly escape and come to your nose. And so they're about 50% cellulose, 10% water, but then they're also 21% alpha acids and 2% oils. They've also got some protein in them, and protein, like I talked about in my last class, protein helps really create some structure to them bubbles. And so if you want to have really nice foamy heads at the top of that beer, you want have a lot of protein. Hops can contribute that. The nice thing about hops is that they give that 2% oil. It's not much, but it's enough to really add to those molecules that give you some of that wonderful smell. The alpha acids are that bitter flavor. And so if you're like me and don't like the bitterness, it's the alpha acids to blame. However, they do serve a purpose. I don't remember the balance of hops in my Yorkshire Round. Bobby, can you tell me how much hops are in here?
IBUs, you mean?
Yeah.
It's about 25.
So the International Bittering Unit is the metric that we put to how much hops are in a beer. So the IBU for my Yorkshire Round is, you said 25?
Yeah.
What about for 547?
Light lager. 547 is about 80.
80, there you go. So that's everyone's like shaking their head like, oh yeah, that's a big one. And so a non-hoppy beer, 18 to 20, hoppy, 70 to 80 or so IBU. So that's that bittering flavor. The aroma, however, comes from that 2% oil. And so this is where those nuances of those hop recipes and which hops you add to which beers really help adjust the smell. Okay, any questions so far? Yeah, so is the IBU more of a kind of a relative scale, or is it an absolute scale? Subjective scale, yeah. So I would say it is an absolute scale, but it depends. And so if you're tasting something that has a high IBU that's going to tell you how many bittering units are present, so how much hops are there. However, that doesn't tell you anything about how much malt or sugar is there to balance that flavor. And so it could be that our very, very hoppy, high IBU beers could also have a ton of malt there to balance the flavor. So it might appear like a high IBU, but you might not taste it as much, or vice versa. A low IBU might not be accentuated as much with the malt flavor or the malt character, and so it stands out more. So it's really about that balancing game.
For that reason, we don't put IBUs on our cans.
For that reason, we don't put IBUs on our cans, is what Bobby says.
Trying to find out, right?
Okay, so we are going to talk about those aromatic compounds, all right? To the edge of your seat, we should move. Here we go. May I introduce the terpenes? Da-na-na. So the terpenes, there are more than 30,000 types of terpenes. And we've talked about this before on our podcast, but the cool thing is if you're listening, you can download these slides and you too can follow along and learn more about the wonders of the terpenes. So they are dominantly made by plants. So if you've ever had, so wait, y'all told me earlier that the Toronado, or Little Toronado, had kind of a grassy flavor. Ta-da! So the grassy flavor is gonna come from these terpenes, and they're kind of this vegetal, plant-like series of molecules. They also dominate the aroma of beer. I don't really have that in my malty Yorkshire round because we didn't pick out the hops that are gonna have dominant oils. The oils or the hops that were chosen for Little Toronado do have a high concentration of these particular aromatics. Cool, okay. So let's talk a little bit about these. Chemistry lesson, woo, I know, collective sigh. Okay, we're gonna start very simple, octane. Have you heard of the word octane? Yes, what is octane? Fuel, gasoline. Go to your car, go to the pump, put fuel in. That is octane. It has 8 carbons. I am going to count these out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But that's busy. I don't like all those hydrogens and it's kind of a lot. So I reduce it to this line structure. This and this to me are the exact same thing as a chemist, which is it makes it easier to see it. So basically, long stick or long bendy stick. That's octane. And we call those hydrocarbons. All right, there's another version of the line structure. Okay, so here are some essential oils, these terpenes. Notice a bunch of sticks. What do you know about octane? Is it a liquid or a gas? I know that's funny, downstairs.
Liquid.
Liquid, cool. And what happens when you mix it with water?
Doesn't.
It doesn't like to mix at all. So because it doesn't mix, that means that those essential oils are going to be the exact same way. They do not want to mix with water at all, okay? So what's going to happen is because they don't want to mix with water, they want to get away from water as fast as possible. When they get away from water, what's going to happen is these basically stick molecules are going to do this fun little animation. Watch it. Dance, 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 escape. Oh. Let's do it again. All right, so we've got one of these stick molecules. Again, this could be any number of these terpenes. When you're cutting your fresh cut grass, or you're cutting not the fresh cut grass, you wouldn't cut grass. You are freshly cutting that grass. What do you smell? Grass. Very sad grass, because you're killing the grass. But what you get is all of those terpene molecules are escaping and quickly coming up into the air. What they're doing is they don't have very strong interactions, so they quick, and evaporate away. This is what makes them aromatic. And anything that you see that's just a bunch of sticks, as in hydrocarbons, are volatile. This is what's happening with the acetone as you walk by the nail salon. It's also what's happening with isopropanol, so rubbing alcohol, very volatile. It's going to evaporate really quickly. This is also what happens with any number of essential oils or the fragrances that are in certain lotions and things. As soon as you smell it, those molecules want to dance, dance, escape. They escape pretty well. So the terpenes, oh, actually, if y'all want to start up the next two, and we're going to do, oh, you've already got them? Ready to go. Love it. So the terpenes become terpenoids. Oh, I mean, that might sound uncomfortable, but the molecules don't mind. So, so I want you to look. I've got two molecules, the top ones and the bottom ones. The top ones have sticks. The bottom ones all have something added to the stick. What's been added to the stick? Oh, an oxygen and a hydrogen. Fantastic. That's what we call a hydroxyl group, or an alcohol. Ooh. So I know, all of those are alcohols, right? They're not the alcohol that we like, that's ethanol. This is the alcohol version, or added a hydroxy group. Double stick became a stick and a OH, or a hydroxyl. Double stick became a stick and a hydroxyl. So when you have the myrcene, once you add that hydroxyl group, then it becomes linalool. This is the smell of lavender. Likewise, myrcene becomes geraniol, which is the smell of rose. Myrcene, once you add the hydroxyl group here, it becomes citronelle, or the citrusy smell. Notice how they all started with the same terpene molecule. So depending on which reaction pathway it goes, or which stick is the one that, like, oh, I guess I'm the one that's going to bond with the hydroxyl or the OH, will give you different types of smells, and sometimes vastly different. So this is one of the challenges of, in the brewing process, making sure that you get your myrcene to go the route that you want it to go. Okay, so these are our two cask conditioned ales. So this is an English IPA and a Yorkshire Round English Brown. This is why I'm drinking our Yorkshire Round tonight. I'm really trying to boost our Yorkshire Round. She's a beauty, oh my goodness. But she doesn't have nearly as many hops. So what you're getting is so this is what I'm drinking up front. So you're getting a lot of the roasty character, but not much in the nose. And our tall mast English IPA, so this one is not going to be a hop bomb. It's not going to smack you with all the different hop aromatics. There's some, but it's not nearly as much. And so the thing about this, I believe, and I don't know where Bobby went, I believe these are the same yeast. So this is a way for us to figure out, okay, this is really just grain and hops are the difference, no yeast differences. So the same yeast are giving you both our Yorkshire Round and our English IPA, the tall mast, and yet different malts and different hops, very much different smells. Go team. Anything else about these two beers? They're both beautiful, aren't they? Okay. So now we're going to go on into mouthfeel. So how did these two, their mouthfeel compare to the Toronado one, the first one that we did? What do you think?
Smoother.
Smoother, okay. A little less bubbly maybe. So the cask conditioned ales are going to have a slightly different mouthfeel. They're going to try and, well, nitrogenation or nitro beers really try and simulate cask conditioned ones. But the mouthfeel of these beers is definitely a lot smoother. They're going to have smaller bubbles. They're not going to have nearly the same effervescence, or they don't have the same number of molecules leaving as soon as you take a drink, because they have fewer of those hop alpha acids. And those hop.
It felt like they had more body.
More body, absolutely. And that, a lot of that body comes from the yeast. The way that the yeast process the sugars and then yield the alcohol, they're also going to yield a lot of different molecules. It's going to affect what's called the viscosity of the beer.
It doesn't hang around in your mouth as long either.
No, not at all.
And then that's it.
So let's talk about three different things about mouthfeel. So there's carbonation, fullness, and aftertaste. So carbonation, this is all about how much CO2 is in the beer, what's the bubble size, the foam volume, is it nitrogenated, is it cask conditioned? So those are going to all affect the mouthfeel. Now, for those of you that experienced, now is your test. For those of you that experienced my last class about the differences between CO2 and nitrogenation or nitrogen, there is a law that governs it all. And it's called Henry's Law. Yes!
Podcast listener.
Henry's Law. Okay, so for those of you that don't recall Henry's Law, shame on you. Get out. There's the door. No, I'm kidding. So Henry's Law, when you shake the crap out of a soda bottle and you then open it, what happens? Psh, right? That's the ultimate definition of Henry's law. That's Henry's law. So the more the carbon dioxide or the nitrogen likes the water, the more it's going to stay in the beer. If you force CO2 or nitrogen into the beer, it's going to want to come out. If you put too much in, it's going to want to come out. That's when you, what's that called when you open a beer? You flick it? I don't even know. You just open one, click. I don't know, well, it's because it's blinding right here. You're the only one I can see. When you pop the top of the beer can, it makes that sound. What that's doing is the CO2 that's in the head pressure is escaping, but there's still CO2 in the beer itself. What happens when you leave that beer for 2 hours in a glass on the table?
It's really flat.
Gets flat. That's Henry's law. That CO2 wants to leave the beer. Nitrogen, however, wants to leave it hell of a lot faster. Nitrogen is what we call nonpolar. It doesn't like to stick around in beer, so it's going to leave faster. That's going to affect the mouthfeel. It's also going to affect how well those aromatic molecules get to your nose as soon as you take a drink. The nitrogenated beers are going to hold on to some of those molecules more. The nitrogenated beers are going to be creamier, and that nitrogen will have already escaped, whereas the CO2 beers are actually going to be coming to your nose a little bit faster. The other thing that's fascinating is that Henry's law is temperature dependent. Let's assume that you have your beer and you've set it outside in winter. Well, don't do it in winter because it'll freeze. But you set it out in early spring in Wisconsin. Then you set it out in the dead of August. Which one goes flat faster? August. Again, temperature dependence of Henry's law. You are already all established in chemistry. This is fantastic. And so the CO2 gets more aromatic or escapes faster when it's hotter. This is one of the reasons that our beer lines are all glycol chilled, because we want to make sure that that beer never touches anything that's not cooler temperatures, because it's going to off-gas the CO2. Well, your mouth is not cooler temperature. So as soon as that beer hits your mouth, those CO2 molecules are going to evaporate faster. And they're going to leave, taking more molecules with them that then go to your nose. It's basically the same as the psh sound when you open that shaken up can, happening every time you take a drink. Right? Okay, so that's CO2 and carbonation. This is why carbonation is so important. Okay. So now to viscosity. This is a fun one. So this, not hot off the presses. My PhD was actually in viscosity. And I've done all the mathematics behind viscosity. So this is the closest I'll ever get to my actual PhD work. But there it is. So viscosity. Perceived way, so the idea is honey is the best example. And speaking of honey, we saw some fantastic honey from the Wisconsin Land Trust that we just put in to our double chocolate stout, I believe is what it's called. The best definition as an expert in viscosity, I can tell you, is the honey. What happens when you heat up the honey?
It lowers the viscosity.
It lowers the viscosity. It flows better. What happens when you chill the honey? I'm getting some choreograph like, yeah, it doesn't move at all. It's really frustrating. And so this is the same thing with beer. Depending on what things are present in the beer, it's going to change the mouthfeel and the viscosity, or the viscosity and the density, which changes the mouthfeel. So mouthfeel also involves aftertaste. So the lasting sensation, that astringency, the stickiness, all of that all contributes to that mouthfeel. So it's like almost the before, the middle, and the after. So one of the things I want to talk about aftertaste is where does it come from? And a lot of the astringency, that kind of puckering, think about tea. When you've steeped that tea a little too long, yeah, I've get a lot of folks are getting that flavor. So who's the culprit? That's the bad boy right there. This is tannic acid. And for those listening at home, Google tannic acid and push the images button, and you'll just see an orgy of molecules and O's and H's. It's quite a bit. Where'd my beer go? There's my beer. Astringency is sometimes called tannic. Well, the reason is because of tannic acid, and that's what tannins are. And they are very large molecules, but the thing is because of all those O's and H's, they hang around. We are water-based life forms. Your saliva is filled with water too. Those little O's and H's are going to attract to water, and they're going to stick around. unlike the sticks that we saw before, those terpenes, which quickly go away. So that's one of the reasons that tannic acid, or those tannins, hang around on your tongue, is because of the type of intermolecular interaction. There's the molecules making a stand. So if you're interested in learning more, people will constantly tell me like, oh, you're a chemist, that must help the beer so much in the brewery. And I am not that kind of chemist. I'm what's called a theoretical physical chemist, so I do the physics of beer, or not physics of beer, I do the physics of chemistry.
Spiritual.
Yes. And I don't do anything actually beer related. I'm not a biochemist. I'm not a synthetic organic chemist. I've learned most of the chemistry I've learned from teaching my chemistry of art course, as well as reading this book by Randy Mosher on tasting beer. It's a fantastic resource. And one of the sad parts about owning a brewery is in the conversations I have with so many folks, there's that hesitation that folks have. They're like, I'd like to tell you about what I think about this beer, but I don't know much about beer. So they clam up and they're like, I'm not worthy enough to talk about beer. And I'm like, but taste is the most honest communication you have with yourself. Does it taste like Band-Aid? Say Band-Aid. Does it taste like roses? Say roses. I don't care. Just tell me what you think. But
we're all blessed with different palates.
Absolutely. Everyone is blessed with different palates. And if you like that beer, if it brings you joy, I'll be damned if I want you to drink anything else. I want you to drink joy. If you look also on the north side of the tap room, you'll see a lot of antique steins. The same gentleman gave those to us as well as a place. He wanted them to be preserved in a place that would respect the beer. And there's no better place to respect the beer than McFleshman's, or by listening to Respecting the Beer podcast. Go team. Hey. All right. Thank you all. Please go team. Please, I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have. There's lots of beer science. Yay. Not all your hands at once. Oh.
A lot of science.
Lots of science there. I think that's all I've got. Yes, that is all I have. All right, thank you all, and enjoy.
I hope you learned something more about beer tasting in this episode. As always, you can join the Facebook group to learn more about the show in between episodes. And you can join us over on Patreon, where you'll get episodes a week ahead of time and bonus content not seen in the main feed. And as always, please remember to respect the beer.